So welcome back to the Active Directory track, and I would like to warmly welcome Pipe and Hao from the US, and I'm thrilled hearing about attacking and defending ISAE forest environments. So the stage is yours.
Thank you, everyone. So our topic today is attack and defend red forest. Thanks for being here. We understand that this is like the last session of the entire conference. We appreciate your passion for AD security. Just run the bio first. So my name is Hao Wang. I'm the manager from EY cybersecurity practice in the US, primarily focused on attack and penetration testing. And before this conference, I present at the Science Threat Hunting and the ISACA conferences. And so my specialized area is actually the fintech application. Basically, we are doing a lot of research, just try to see if there are any vulnerability we can leverage to actually transfer money through like account payable system, something like that. We can talk after this if you are interested in.
Hi, my name is Pipe Rodanant, or my first name is Yothin. That's Thai name. So, but all my friends call me Pipe, basically. So I'm doing a similar job as Hao. I'm a pen tester, red teamer. Primarily focus on doing offensive stuff, trying to simulate the attack in a corporate environment. And I present one of the topic at RSA about the VoIP security. So in this, my other focus area that I've been serving a lot of clients in a cruise environment, a cruise ship and a casino. So those are my day job, is doing a lot of those testing.
Okay, so I think we just go through like some basic stuff, disclaimer. So none of the ideas, content, opinions expressed into this presentation are shared, supported, endorsed by any of like our employer, and no CVE exploitation included into this presentation, but just the overlook technique, procedures to use to identify the misconfiguration of Active Directory, as well as other security solutions.
So first, I would like to thank people in this field. So these are all famous guys who share all the knowledge in this industry, including Will Shorter, who is the author of the Power View. Sean McKeith just spoke this morning about the Active Directory journey. And Matt Graber, who the author of the PowerPoint and other blogs that include a lot of interesting exploit. And also my coworker who helped us to make through this conference. Our topic gonna briefly touch upon these areas: the abusing AD permission, how to subverting the virtual machine, virtualized environment, and leverage the endpoint security to attack the REST forest, and including how we bypass some of the four in the two-factor authentication bypass concept. So those are real-world experience that we came across and would like to share with everybody here. And at closing, we're going to provide some of the overview how we would like to see the improvement in the REST forest implementation and help hopefully secure the corporate environment. So just to give you a simple overview, I know you probably already heard multiple times what is REST forest. So there are two main concepts about REST forest, or the official name is called Enhanced Security Administrative Environment. So there are two main concepts. Basically, is to help providing the hardened administrative environment, basically a way for sysadmin to log in securely to manage the forest domain. And then also, basically, the admin should connect to the encrypted tunnel so they can manage the environment securely. Secondly is the concept of tier segmentation. Basically, there are 3 tiers. The tier 0 is concluding the domain administrator, enterprise admin of the top of the food chain, basically. These are the most powerful guys in the organization. Tier 1, including most of the server admin that provide support for the application and server, including some of the service account. And Tier 2 is mostly workstation admin. Some of the guys would include in this category probably some help desk and technical support guy that help reset password. So here's the main concept of this, the tier model. Basically, each admin in each tier are not supposed to access the level either higher up or lower. They should manage the log into their own tier. Basically, do not expose their credential across different environments, so prevent the cross-pollination of the password that potentially attacker might be able to jump around. If they compromise one machine, they should not be able to escalate privilege to the higher up level. So it's a great concept, basically help prevent some of the common attack in the password reuse vulnerability, or some of the most basic security hygiene that we may not found across the environment.
Yeah, I can go through this. So I think Pipe just walked through us with the different tiers, right, for the Red Forest. Right now, we are going to give some quick overview about the actual Red Forest, which is actually like a standalone like forest. If you see like the red color on the top, that's like a standalone forest, which is isolated from we call that production environment. If you see like all the blue 3, like tier 0, tier 1, tier 2, we treat that like as a production environment. So it's one-way trust. So it means like you can access to the production like tier 0 from the ESAE forest, but you can now do the other way around. And ideally, there should be no members, no accounts under the domain admin group or enterprise admin group of the production environment. Okay, so they use basically the ESAE admin to manage the production forest. And in addition to that, so all the admin group members from the production forest should not have any sort of access to the Red Forest. And there should be also privilege management tool to be used to manage different tier. So for the ESAE, they should have a separate password management tool than the regular tier, like tier 1, tier 2. And so just to, based on our past experience, right, so when we perform a number of different pen testing for the different company network, most of them are internal network. So you will find out, okay, it's actually not that hard to get certain access to 2 tiers, which are the tier 2 and the tier 1. Basically, they are hosting, tier 2 hosting like workstations. Tier 1 are like being used to host a lot of servers, right? Just imagine like the attacker send a phishing email to a target victim, and then they can probably get a command shell back, right, from the C2. Then they have the remote control to the tier 2. And then they can probably do additional privilege escalation, lateral movement, find some vulnerable maybe application running on some server like a JBoss, Tomcat, or vulnerable database, or they can perform SP and Kerbals attack, right? So somehow they can escalate their privilege to tier 1. Yeah, but what we found is actually really, really hard within the Red Forest environment to escalate privilege from tier 2, tier 1 to tier 0, just because a few things, right? As we mentioned before, the domain admin account, so ideally they should not exist. Even they exist in the production environment, they never log into like the lower tiers. So like if you don't have those accounts, how can you access to tier 0? And in addition to that, certain network segmentation control is also placed. So you cannot just talk to tier 0 from either tier 1 or tier 2. And so in this presentation, we will primarily focus on how to escalate the privilege from tier 1 and tier 2 to tier 0. Basically, we are trying to compromise the domain controller level environment based on the access we got from tier 2 or tier 1. And so the first technique we are going to talk about is the abusing AD permission. I'm pretty sure since like early last year, we have here a lot of topic presentations about this. Even like I'm pretty sure if you are in this track this morning, I think Sean and Will cover a lot. And we will, for our talk, we will give you guys some demo about how you actually do this step by step. So there are like two things we want to cover for this. So typically, to attack this AD permission, our approach is very straightforward. Is to look for something called a shadow admin account that is not well protected by Red Forest. So according to CyberArk, right, the shadow admin account are other accounts in your network that are always overlooked, just because those accounts doesn't belong to any powerful group. Yeah, but so like I can give you guys a small story about 7-8 years ago when I just joined the pen testing team, right? When we performed the engagement, so what we do, right? We typically just look for who are the members of domain admin or enterprise admin, right? And then we try to target those accounts, compromise those accounts, and at the end we try to dump out all the password hash from domain controller. That's the old way. But now, like since last year, I think we have a brand new way, right? So in addition to look for those accounts, we can look for some account which has some special permission, such as something like DC sync, right? This account doesn't need to belong to any powerful domain group. As long as they have those permission, they can do the same thing as domain admin or enterprise admin. Okay, and so there are like 4 topics. The first one, we are going to look for accounts group which has DC sync permission. And the second approach we are going to introduce is like look for account group with special control to the root domain object. The third one, we will spend a lot of time on the demo in this Microsoft Exchange server. I think, so Sean mentioned this a little bit this morning. So we found this like about late last year. It's brand new technique. And the fourth one, we will talk about something regarding to admin SD holder. So as you know, for those of you who don't know about what DC sync is, basically DC sync is more like a technique that allow you to impersonate yourself, your machine as a domain controller, and then from that machine you can try to replicate sensitive information from other domain controllers, such as password hash, right? So to perform a DC sync, right, typically you need to have 2 permissions in the AD environment. You need to have something called replication directory change and the replication directory change all. So as long as you have those 2 permissions, you can perform the DC sync. Okay, so just based on our experience for the past 2 years, we found a few like application services that are always running within the AD environment. They always have those DC sync permission. And we will just go through a couple. Okay, so the first is a Microsoft SharePoint. Okay, so there's a service account in Microsoft SharePoint called a user profile service account. We also can call that UPS account. Okay, so what this account does, it actually synchronizes the user profile information from the AD, right? Just to make sure PowerShell has all the updated information from AD. So according to the Microsoft documentation, you only need to give like 1 permission, which is the replicate directory change, in order for this account to be functioning. But like in the real environment, that's not always the case. We always like find people give those 2 permissions, which is replication directory change and the directory change all to this account, which means if you compromise the SharePoint server, okay, you get a clear text credential for this service account, then you can do DC sync with your domain controller directly. And this is another thing we saw. It's called a riverbed steelhead technology. If you have this technology in your cooperative environment, then you need to be careful. Okay, so to like synchronize with AD, you have to configure a service account just to do this work. Okay, and according to the documentation of riverbed, you have to give DC sync permission to this service account. So it means if you compromise this account, then you can own the entire domain. And this is the third one. I think Sean touched base this on this morning. So right now we understand, right? A lot of us, like we try to migrate our AD network to the cloud, right? To do that, you probably need to set up something like a service account just to synchronize all your password credential between your local on-premise environment to the cloud, right? And this credential, the service account has to have the DC sync permission. So if you compromise this synchronization server, okay, you get this service account, you can also own the AD as well as Red Forest. You just need to perform a DC sync. And so in addition to the DC sync, we can also look for some special account which has the full control permission to the root domain object, right? So if you have full control to the entire domain root object, it means like you have DC sync automatically, and you can do a lot of things, even change the admin SD holder object to maintain persistence. Okay, so I think this is like a very important thing we want to talk about, the Microsoft Exchange, right? So if you own the Microsoft Exchange, you potentially can own the entire AD just based on this. So there are actually two groups within Microsoft Exchange server. The first one called the Exchange Windows Permission. The second one called Exchange Trust Subsystem. And the Exchange Trust Subsystem is actually a nested member of Exchange Windows Permission. Okay, so just according to the Microsoft documentation, all the members within those two groups can potentially modify all Windows accounts and groups. So what does that mean? That means if you compromise the Exchange server, okay, and you can use the NT system privilege of that server to give any domain user account some powerful permission, such as DC sync, and then you can use that account to replicate password hash from domain controller. So we test this on the 2010-2013 Exchange environment, and it all works. We believe it will work on 2016 as well, just because the permission, once the permission is there, it's hard to remove those permissions. And you may ask, is that going to work on Office 365? Just because it's all on cloud, how can you compromise this, right? So even you have Office 365, right? So for some reason, like you have to have a local Exchange server just to try to synchronize the user profile change, right? So if you have the local Exchange server, then this attack still works. And so yeah, we talk about a lot about Exchange group membership. I'm sure some of you may be confusing. So we did a diagram just to show this process, right? So first you have the Exchange Windows Permission group, which has the modified permission to the root AD object, okay? And then you have like a member under this group, which is another group called Exchange Trust Subsystem, okay? And under this group, basically all the Exchange server machine account are under this group. And if you have one of those accounts, you can modify the permission for the domain user, give them some powerful rights. And we will just make a demo for the entire process. Okay, so now, okay, how do we show this? Okay, so you can see the screen now.
Okay, good.
Okay, let's go. Yeah, first we log into a domain controller. Basically, we add a regular domain user account. We call that red team, okay? And now we just try to validate if this account is created or not. So now this account is created. So this is just like a regular domain user account, and it only belongs to domain user group, nothing else. And if you check if there are any special permission for this account, there's nothing. So you can see there's no red team. Okay, then we log into the Exchange server, okay, as a local admin account. In this case, we call that Exchange. So this is just a local admin account. It's not a domain account. What this account does, it just has local admin access to this Exchange server itself, as you can see. So now we use like psexec to kick off PowerShell.exe. Just want to run PowerShell as an NT system. And now we are trying to basically load the tool to do the attack, right? We are trying to use PowerView because there's a module which you can modify user account permission. Okay, so I'm running who am I? You can see I'm running as NT system of the Exchange server. And now we are using the PowerView module, add the domain object permission. We are trying to give the DC sync permission basically to the red team account we just created. Okay, let's go back to the domain controller just to see if the red team account has any change. Are there any new permission applied for this account? So as you can see, we just use a local admin account on the Exchange server. Then we run that as NT system. Then we can modify permission. And you see, the red team account is there. And then let's check the permission. As you can see, you have those 3 permission, and which actually allow you to do the DC sync. Basically, those are the one we mentioned before: replication directory change, replication directory change all. So right now, we just want to do a proof of concept to see if we can use the red team account to do a DC sync to dump all the password credential from our domain controller. As you can see, so it works. You can dump all the query from domain controller. Okay, so how should we go this one? Thank you. Should we go to the presentation mode? Okay. Yeah, so no matter, this is not only apply for the Red Forest environment, right? It also apply for the regular AD environment. So we need to just protect the AD Exchange environment as tier 0, right? Just as domain controller. Because based on the setup of Microsoft, if someone can compromise Exchange, they can do really, really bad thing within the environment. And the last thing for the AD permission we want to talk about is the admin SD holder. As you all know, right, we have been talking about this topic for the past few years. And basically, admin SD holder is an object located in the system partition of AD. And so the powerful part for this object is the access control list of admin SD holder is used as a template to copy all the permission to all the protected group within AD, such as domain admin or enterprise admin. So if I have a user account which has certain permission for admin SD holder, I pretty much can essentially add somebody to domain admin group or enterprise admin group, right? So the goal of this approach is to identify if there are any account exist in your environment which can do this. And so basically we look for 3 permissions, right? Like full control, modify permission, read permission. Once you get any one of those, you can potentially add any user domain user account to domain admin group. So we just want to highlight the modify permission. So with that permission, you cannot directly add anyone to the domain admin group. But what you can do, you can give any domain user permission to have full control to this object. Then use that account to add another account to the domain admin group.
Sure. The next technique that we often leverage and then use in the attacking the Red Forest is to manipulate the virtualization environment. So as the virtualized infrastructure is very, very attractive for attacker because basically most company they love deploying virtualized environment. It saves time. You can stand up a server quickly, and sometimes we've seen a lot of clients that actually having the virtualized domain controller. Basically, you can have domain controller inside your VMware vSphere system. So a lot of people may not aware when they implement this. Then the virtualized admin also have almost like a God mode access to your environment. And then sometimes you may require two-factor authentication for those domain admin account, but do you have the same treatment for VM admin? Those are not always the case from what we found in real world. Sometimes they forgot about this account or service account that used to manage this system. So these are a great way that attacker would look for an opportunity to hijack or compromise this account, and then they would be able to access the domain controller, as well as extracting password hash and content within the VMware or virtualized guest OS. So we want to show a few things we've seen. So some of the organizations, when they implement the virtualized system, they have a lot of accounts. Everybody in the IT system is almost having admin access, or sometimes they are part of a nested group, which is almost like people, oh, I want to stand up a new VM, give me access. So these are some of the bad hygiene we've seen across many places. And then, as you see on it's quite small, but basically some of the environment that we came across is actually having like over 4,000 guest OS. So once you gain access to this, you're gonna pretty much have access to everywhere in the organization. So here's another cool thing about those virtualized servers. So it's a feature basically allow admin to log in at the console. So although you have network segmentation, but if your segmentation is inside the virtualized environment, the VMware admin could potentially use the open console feature, which is pretty much a backdoor that you can presume that you log in as if you are local at the machine, and then jump across the network if they have multiple network segmentation. So VMware or Dell Drag or some of the KVM out-band management interfaces often overlooked, because these are ways that attacker can leverage to use as a jumping box to access your server across network segment. And next we're going to look upon how we're going to be able to access a file system. So assume that the presumption is, the prerequisite is to the hacker gain access or compromise some VM admin account. So in order to access the file system, the ultimate goal for attacker, usually they want to be domain admin. They want to get password hashes for the entire organization. So the option one is to leverage the native feature. You can use either the data store browser, which is inside part of the vSphere thick client, or the newer version, they have web interface, so you can browse to the web interface and go to each VM and then go there and then download the VMDK file, which is the file system that VMware store of the guest OS. Or alternatively, you can use a PowerShell. Everybody loves PowerShell, so VMware provides the PowerShell CLI SDK, so you can download and then import PowerShell module, type some command line, then you can copy file out of the hypervisor. But what we found that the most reliable way we can do is use a tool called Veeam, Backup and Replication Service. So this tool, basically, it temporarily creates a snapshot, and then you can copy a file out. So it works like a hot clone. Basically, you can copy your live domain controller image outside the vSphere system. So sometimes we don't even need to log into the domain controller. We log into vCenter because people forgot to monitor this system. So it's a great way to steal credentials. Once you get those VMDK file, how you're going to be able to access it? So oftentimes the VMware disk usually span across multiple chunks. You probably need to combine it to a single file. So VMware already provides those utility that you can combine it into a single flat file. So some of the command we put in the deck here. So you can use that to combine multiple small VMware file into a single file, and then use the forensics tool utility. Most of these are open source. You can download it and basically mount the VMDK file on your Windows, and then gain access to the content of those file guest OS. Alternatively, if you're a Linux fan, you can also do a loopback mount on your system. Basically, specify the NTFS file and then mount loopback interface and gain access to those file content. So this attack assumes that the environment does not enable the full disk encryption. But most of the time, we've seen that not many players that enable full disk encryption due to the performance restriction. People don't want to slow down their application, so they have an argument, oh, we're not going to enable encryption because it impacts the application performance. Next, we're going to touch upon the leveraging endpoint security product to attack the REST forest environment.
Okay, guys. So there are a few reasons why we want to use this technique, right? The first, as we all know, right, the security protection solution can pretty much reach out to everywhere of the network, right? Because they need to talk, they need to be whitelisted. And the second, right? So most security solutions they run as a server agent layer approach, right? So you have a central server, and then you have the agent to push to all the endpoint. So you have those command and control process, and in most of the time, those agents run on behalf of NT system. So you have a lot of privilege on that. And so we will touch base on 4 categories. The first one is antivirus. The second one is a configuration management tool. In this case, so we will talk about ADCCM and network backup solution. The last one is very popular, is the endpoint detection response. We also call that EDR solution. So we will talk about some if we gain admin access to the semantic endpoint protection console, and this console is also being used to manage your tier 0 system in your red forest, then we can pretty much do some bad things on that, right? So the goal of this attack is to push payload from your semantic console to the domain controller or some other tier 0 system. And so there are a few procedures in order to accomplish that. So first, we need to somehow create a payload from the semantic console and then push the payload to the target. Just for the screenshot here, so there's a feature in semantic console they call the host integrity policy. So what this does, it's actually being used by enterprise to check the compliance of all the endpoint managed by semantic. Okay, so this feature basically allows us to add something called a customer requirement, okay? And where you actually can craft your payload. Basically, you can inject a tool, you can install a tool, you can craft your script, you can put a PowerShell impaired payload, or you can run a batch file. So in this case, we will show a demo later. In this case, we use VB script. So there are two payloads. The first payload basically assume our targeted domain controller. We are going to create a domain user account first. And then the second payload will help to add this domain user account to the domain admin group. And then you can, after you draft this policy, your payload, and then you can assign this policy to the specific group you want this policy to be executed. So we are going to have a demo here. Okay, so you can see it now. So now we just try to see there's a user account called Red Team 1, just to see if this user account exists. It doesn't exist now. And then we log into the semantic management console, okay? And then we go to the host integrity policy. We try to create a new policy, basically. So this is a pretty standard. For most of the semantic endpoint management console, you have this feature. And then under the requirement field, where you can create something called payload or requirement. So in this case, basically we put the 2 payloads. So you can run multiple payload at one time in one policy. So for this case, we use one VB script. Basically, we try to add one regular domain user account called Red Team 1. So we just validate that this account doesn't exist yet. And then we try to have the second payload. Basically, after we create a regular domain user account, red team 1, we try to add this account to the domain admin group. Okay, so the policy is created. Now we need to just save the policy. And then, like what I mentioned before, we need to assign this policy to the specific target where you want to run this. Yeah, so in our environment, there are like two machines, a domain controller and a regular machine, which hosts the semantic console. So we just run for the entire company. Yeah, and it's a little bit slow. It's probably going to take like 1 minute to actually, for the policy to be executed on the target. So now we go back to the domain controller. We try to see if this red team 1 user account is created or not. So we can see that this user is created and it has been added to the domain admin group. So that's how we demonstrate this, right? Like just like you have access to the semantic console, and this console is being used to manage domain controller, and then you can use this trick to perform your attack. So how should I do that? Okay, so next we want to talk about ADCCM. I know this topic has been around for a number of years. It just like the reason we put this into a deck, it's just like an alternative approach for you to attack red forest, right? So assume you have admin access to the ADCCM console, right? What you can do, you can pretty much do the same thing as we just did in semantic management console, right? You can create an ADCCM payload, right? And then you can deploy this payload to your target machine. And so there are two ways to do this. The first one, like if you have the GUI access to the ADCCM server, you can do everything from the GUI. Or you have the PowerShell like payload, like a PowerShell ADCCM, which is written by MetaGrabber. Yeah, that one also works. So we just want to walk through the simple step, right? The first one, if you have the GUI access to the ADCCM server, you can first establish a connection, okay? Once you have the connection, we call that you need to create an ADCCM application. In this case, this is actually our payload, okay? So after you have your payload, and then you can try to deploy your payload to the target collection. The collection means your target host, right? You can have multiple collections within your environment, and you can create your collection just based on your preference, right? In this case, I probably will do this as for domain controller, right? Then I just create one collection for domain controller and assign a payload to domain controller. And so those are the Power ADCCM command we list here. And basically, if you use Power ADCCM, you can accomplish the same thing from the GUI. And another thing we want to talk about is the net backup solution, right? Just like when we try to target red forest, right, we came across some backup server. Just in case the backup server you have access to has backup process running on a domain controller, then I think there's a pretty high possibility you can compromise the domain controller if the backup file is not encrypted, right? And so the goal is here, like for this approach, is to back up some sensitive file from your backup image. And so for this example, we are using the net backup server, right? So once you log into the net backup management console, you can see multiple restoration points, right? From each one of those, you can actually you actually have a backup image, and you can try to restore file from each one of those. So and basically, it has a function allow you to back up a specific file. For example, if it's domain controller, you can back up the ntds.def file, and then you can accomplish your goal from there. And so the good thing for this approach is very stealthy, right? You run everything from a backup server, and from the blue team side, it's really hard for them to detect this kind of activity. And the last thing for the security solution we want to touch base is the endpoint solution, right? We call that EDR solution. So like just from the attacker perspective, the EDR solution is more like a command and control framework, right? You have a central server, you have the agent, and the agent is installed on all your endpoint, right? And then you try to, there's maybe some live response capability built in with this EDR solution. Then from there, you can like run whatever command you want, and you can pull whatever data from the system for forensic purpose, right? So the risk is, right, once this EDR console is compromised, then you own everything. And as far as we know, there are like two solutions for the EDR. There's a like cloud instance for a lot of company, right? Basically, they are hosting this console on the cloud, right, where everyone can reach from internet. That's very dangerous. And so this is just one example, right? So we found that this interface being hosted by the cloud, okay? And then what we did, we actually generate a fake page with exactly the same thing, and we found some people, okay, from LinkedIn, and it turned out this people is the Carbon Black admin, okay. And so that we send these people a phishing email. Basically, we are saying, okay, we are on behalf of Carbon Black. We are doing system upgrade. You need to validate your account before certain days. And then they just log in, right? Sometime, okay? And people may say, okay, there are like a lot of those vendors, they are using two-factor authentication, but I can tell you that's not the case. For example, like this, okay? So there are like options for those EDR solutions. You can either do two-factor authentication, or you can just use single-factor authentication. So it's not enforced for multi-factor authentication. And in case like they use single-factor, then you can just get access. So this screenshot shows the live responsibility capability for EDR solution. So from this user interface, you can execute your command. So that's it.
So now we're moving on to the next topic, which is the multi-factor authentication. So a lot of companies start adopting, do a great job of implementing multi-factor authentication. However, there are still some gaps when we see across many places. So most of the issue we found is in most organizations is the provisioning process. So when they start enrolling user, the different product do differently, but most of the time people leverage email to deliver the link to register that soft token. So what we came across is we test multiple products that we've seen at different places. Most of the time they did not expire the activation link, which means most people sometimes they left that email activation inside their mailbox. And sometimes if you attacker manage to compromise somebody just username and password, they could log into the webmail interface and gain access to those credentials. So for example, this product, we've been testing some environment. This is not all represent the overall, but we've seen at least 3 or 4 instances in the wild that we've been testing. Once you log into the self-service console, which is a portal, a nice portal for user to go manage their own soft token. So if attacker log in to those and then it does not require two-factor, the self-service portal is not always require you to log in with two-factor authentications. Some environment, when they use it internally, they just use domain credentials. So if attackers somehow get domain credentials, they could look for port 7004, which is a default port for the management console, and then start logging into those console. And then in this case, we were able to add another token and enroll a new token to your own device. Basically, the existing user has access to the token on the iPhone. I can add another device on my Windows PC or another Android phone. So sometimes some players, they did not restrict the number of tokens that allow you to enroll in the system. So you can potentially abuse this feature to enroll your own token and gain access to different systems. And by default, is not turned on for a notification is not turned on. So the admin have to go through their configuration and make sure they enable some level of notification. So if somebody managed to compromise credentials, add a new token, by default, you don't get that notification somebody messed with your account. So you have to go there and manually turn on somebody's notification so you get those, at least you know somebody messing with your account, trying to enroll a new token or changing your password or pins. So these are some features that we have seen people still misconfigure or forgot to turn on this basic stuff. Next is another product that is a very cost-effective multi-factor solution. We have seen they use basically it's a lookup table which allow you to, when you authenticate to an application with two-factor authentication enabled, it will ask a security question, basically what is the letter on the column A or row number 4, and then you refer to that data card. Basically, it's a PDF file that's sent in email. So if somebody managed to compromise your email box and found this piece of information, they could have access to the system. Similarly, you can also recover this file from the self-service console by logging into find those self-service console, log in with domain credentials. If somehow the user is not required to provide two-factor to access the self-service portal, then you just use that just single factor, basically username and password, to log in and download that token information and have access to those applications. The next one is also very popular. This also has option in the on-premise or in the cloud. So those self-service portal is not always required to manage using two-factor. So what we've seen is if in a large organization, it takes some time to enroll all user to get multi-factor. So for some reason, a new joiner to the company, they may not necessarily have two-factor set up. So we found that if we somehow compromise the new user they haven't set up before, then you just need to log in with domain credentials. It's just a matter of figure out which user is a new joiner, looking by query the Active Directory, looking for user who recently joined or recently create. Then you can have an opportunity to log into those systems that haven't been set up before, then add your own token that way. And another product we've seen is they also use that QR code, basically also sent through email. It doesn't, by default, it doesn't limit the number of activation. So same thing. If you found a SharePoint or the user mailbox that you can compromise, then you can potentially reuse this, the QR code to activate another token. By default, it doesn't limit the number of activation. So you can have multiple tokens on a different device.
Okay, so yeah, so we are jumping to the last section. Basically, we just want to summarize what we have talked. So basically, during this talk, we just try to demonstrate some overlooked technique, procedures, right, tools we can use to compromise AD environment as well as Red Forest, which is ESAE, right? And so the first thing we typically need to do, we need to know our environment. We need to know our accounts. So from both the group perspective and the permission perspective, right? And then we need to treat all of the accounts as our tier 0 account, just for admin level purpose and protect them. And the second thing, we need to use some password management solution to manage all those AD admin accounts. And we need to try to host some critical infrastructure such as domain controller in the hardware solution. But in most of the organization, it's really hard to implement. So if virtual DC is required, we need to make sure the entire disk is fully encrypted. Okay. And we also need to, so basically like, I think Sean mentioned this morning, we need a separate like a security solution for each layer of the red forest, right? So just in case you compromise one layer, it doesn't allow you to compromise the other layer. And also effective network segmentation should be implemented across different layers of the network. And so password for the legacy account, such as local admin, service account should be changed maybe every 6 months, every year, every 2 years. And we understand for most big company, it's hard to do that, especially for service account, because you have to investigate a lot to know what the service account do and before you take a certain action. Then the third one is to like enhance the delivery mechanism and the validation process for the device that actually enroll the two-factor or multi-factor authentication. So that's all our content for today. Any questions? I don't know if we have extra time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for your excellent summary of the attack vectors with respect to a red forest. Are there any questions? No questions?
I have 2 questions. First, you recommend a password management solution. Isn't the password management solution a risk at itself to have one? Because this is a single point of attack? That's the first question.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's a good question. How about, what's the second one?
And the second is because of this password management solutions, they normally are working by using NTLM hashes or they access the critical systems with a password. So we have NTLM hashes anywhere leaving around, hanging around, and they are changed back. But these NTLM hashes we can reuse for a specific time. So doesn't it make really sense to use that privileged account management systems which are using passwords?
So the goal is usually to make attacker life harder. By having the managed password management solution, it's kind of slow down attacker, right? When you have the time to live, the password might be good for 6 hours or 2 hours, and then you combine with detection method to see if somebody log in with to those privileged account with varied password or multiple failed attempt. So it's not always a perfect solution, but at least it's better than having one password that compromised and you get access pretty much everywhere. And then, and this, from what we've seen in the environment is when you start using those, it's always some exception account, right? So it's account, maybe they didn't enroll into, Microsoft has things called MSA, Managed Service Account, which basically mandate the password to rotate 128 characters, which is good. Yep. At least those are good practice that I think we probably help. I mean, it's not always going to be perfect that prevent every attack, but at least it's slow down and then help the organization to detect when it sees those failed attempts or those passwords being reused.
Yeah, and in addition to that, so based on Microsoft recommendation, all the password management solutions should be hosted in a separate forest. So they have their own forest. And in addition to that, it requires like multi-factor authentication. So you need both your separate forest domain credential and your token to access to that solution in order to access to certain production object. So this is like the structure we lay out here, right? And you have different solution, password management solution for different layer. Yeah, but we understand this is going to take a lot of efforts to implement. That's why like we didn't see a lot of environment are actually doing this. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure we will see this in the future.
More questions?
Thank you so much for the presentation. It's not really a question, but Just an advice for the next one. You should also consider EPMI and rack of the server itself, because you recommend to make a dedicated server, but unfortunately there is also a lot of administration things to manage a dedicated server, like from Dell is rack, ILO for HP, and yeah, it's also an interesting point of view to make some bad things.
Yes.
More questions? Okay, so thank you very much again. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much to the audience. I'm really happy that we established an Active Directory track within Troopers. We will do our best to have it again next year. Tomorrow we have the roundtables. Those one who leave us today, I wish everyone a safe travel home. And latest, see you next year again. Bye.